Good morning, our viewers. You're welcome to the program, The Dialogue. Good morning, my name is Simapolo, and it's another Saturday when we sit to put into context the national matters and issues that made the week. It was quite a busy week, and many issues will be laid on the table this morning. Of course, we cannot forget that the bad news continue to trickle in. People have lost lives, people are in intensive care units, people are suffering the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic. In that matter, we have to commiserate with those that lost their loved ones, but all we can do is to send prayers to them. We this week lost prominent citizens. One of them, of course, there are many, but one of them is the director, private sector foundation unit, Uganda, Mr. Gideon Badagawa. We also lost the chairperson of the Kampala Capital City Traders Association, Kasita, Mr. Everest Kayondo. We also lost many other people, but the sad news that is trickling in is that Bishop Stephen Semfuma of UCC Makerere has also passed on. It's really, really sad. We send condolences to the family, the whole church and the body of Christ for that huge loss. But of course, things as we look at it are not getting better on the side of the health sector. The health situation in this country is not getting any better, and that is what has prompted even the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda to suspend business for at least 2 weeks starting on Monday in order to get time to disinfect the premises, and amid concerns and reports that many legislators contracted the virus. And some reports also show that some of them have actually been flown abroad for treatment, but that has not been confirmed yet. Of course, we are talking about the pandemic, we are talking about the lockdown, the 42-day lockdown that was imposed by the president as a measure to stop the spread of the COVID-19 coronavirus infections, and many other issues happened in this week. One issue is that the ministers that were appointed to cabinet recently also took office. We saw Right Honorable Ruth Nankabirwa taking oath and taking office. We saw other ministers, even the Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga also took office. Many of them took office this week. But also the highlight in that particular issue is the statements that were made by the former Minister for Security, General Tumwine, who at the time of handover said that he is going to advise the president to look at how Uganda can have a smooth transition on presidency. So that one has actually created debate in the public, and probably when my guests arrive, I will have to give them time to make a comment on that particular issue. Then this week also the country turned back to God again. We are talking about the National Prayer Day that was announced by the president, and it was yesterday in State House. Interdenomination prayers were made, and the president used that platform to tell the country that what is going on is all about lack of concern, that the public is not has not taken concern of what is happening, and that is why we are losing people. That is why the infections are rising, and that is why people are dying. Of course, we cannot fail to talk about the news that excited the public. Government announced through the office of the Prime Minister that there will be relief support that will be extended to vulnerable members of the public, and that one has also created debate on one, how the vulnerable will be identified, and again how much will be given, and of course looking at how transparent that process will be. Well, we are ready now to kick off the show. I have a guest in the studios. Mr. Simon Peter Kinobe is a lawyer, and he's the former president of the Uganda Law Society. Counsel, you're welcome to the program. It is The Dialogue.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I pray that everyone that is listening to us will stay safe and stay healthy. I pray and hope that whatever we discuss today shall be meaningful, helpful to the public, and that it shall bring more enlightenment to our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Counsel, Simon Peter Kinobe is in the studios and will be joined by Honorable Matthias Nsamba. I'm sorry, Honorable Matthias Mpuga. I'm sorry for that. And he's the legislator from Nyendo Mukungwe, but again, he is the leader of opposition in Parliament. We will shortly join him, and we want him to speak to our viewers in flash. Okay, we will join him. We'll join him in a flash, but of course he's right there. Counsel, let's start off the program. I would want to ask you, how was your week?
This week has been a week of mixed feelings. And mixed feelings because so much has been happening. We have my friend Mpuga appointing his cabinet.
The shadow cabinet.
We have President Museveni appointing, swearing in actually his cabinet. We've had the day of prayer, which was, I think, a very, very good thing. But I think the saddest point is the spike in COVID-19.
Yeah, true.
What we have been saying all along is we need to take care, we need to be careful, and unfortunately at a certain point this issue became political, then it got out of hand, and now our people are dying. Everybody in the country in one way or the other is affected. Because you see the capacity of our Medicare system to handle that flux of people is wanting, and we've seen this in Rome, we've seen this in Spain, we've seen this everywhere, and so now our people are dying. We're fighting for oxygen, among others. So for me, that has been the saddest point during this past week. But hopefully we're going to get a grip of it, because at least the numbers have started dropping. So for me, that's a plus, that the numbers have dropped, but it's sad that many of our good people, many good Kayondo, Susan Bulamu, Mr. Badagawa, Gideon, many people have lost parents. It's so sad. So this week for me has been a week of sadness because of that. Yeah.
All right, Counsel Simon Peter Kinobe, I want to know if my guest outside out the studio is ready, so that I call on him to speak to our viewers, but we'll connect with him in a flash. Counsel, you've talked about the cabinet ministers taking office, and that was the highlight actually. They started the other week, and this week they've been taking office. The highlight is General Tumwine making those strong statements after being appointed a senior presidential advisor to the president, and he's saying one of those issues he will highlight is the issue of the transition. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I think within his right, he will advise. He's an advisor. He's been in government for the last several years, 35 plus. So he's one of the 5-star generals, and he's been here for long. One of the things I have learned in life is consistency is very important. And I think we see a break in consistency. But that as it may be, yes, he feels, and many people feel that perhaps it's time for a transition. Me, in my personal view, transition is a trivial issue. Because whether we want it or not, and you remember when I came here a few months ago, I told people that whether we want it or not, a transition will happen.
There will be a transition.
There will be a transition, and I even put the number of years it will take to get that transition. And for me, so the question of whether there is a transition to this is not important. The transition will happen. That's not an issue. It's not a point to make. The question, and I think the issue that should concern Ugandans, is we are getting a transition from this to what? And that's what should concern Ugandans, number one. So you don't just go into a transition and bring uselessness or incompetence in the name of a transition. That's one issue we need to settle. That to what are we transitioning to? Number two, you see, I strongly believe that when you have systems in place working, for instance, if you have parameters of accountability, if you have pressure points making sure that government delivers, if you have technocrats doing their job, then the issue of who occupies that seat, in my opinion, becomes irrelevant. And so while people are getting excited over the transition, oh, he has said this, he has said, for me that's a very unexceptionally trivial matter. The question at hand is how have we prepared for continuity as a country? Because continuity is very, very important. What kind of transition are we going into? So Ugandans, and we've talked to Ugandans, and Ugandans will tell you we are safer with the devil we know than the angel we don't know. What does that show you? That people have entered a comfort zone with the status quo. And so for us to have that transition that we want, that change that Tumwine is talking about, there should be something formidable presented to the society. And so transition is a non-issue, but to what is the question that we should be discussing.
Councillor, are you insinuating that we are not ready for that debate? We are not ready for a smooth transition?
I'm not saying we are not ready for a smooth transition. We will always be ready for a smooth transition. We have a constitution in place that provides for it. We have all these laws that make sure that there should be a smooth transition. But what I am saying is whether the transition happens now or tomorrow is a non-issue, because it will happen. It will happen. It's like discussing whether Chinobe will die or not. I will die. So for you to sit here and discuss my departure from the realm Earth is really useless. It's not a point. I think the point is what happens if Chinobe dies. That should be the most important thing, because there are people that I will leave behind. There are people that have invested in the country. There are people that have nowhere to go. They were born in Uganda, they will stay in Uganda. So the transition is really a change from one leader to another leader. And I think the people of Uganda are more interested in what kind of transition? What happens when this transition comes? Shall we still have the peace that we have cherished so much that Museveni brought? Shall we be able to transact and do business freely like we have been doing? And I'm not saying it's a perfect system. Yes, there are business challenges. But the Ugandan wants to know that I can sleep and wake up and go and do my business and come back peacefully and make money, you know, and look after my children.
Okay.
So what we should be discussing is how we come from good to better. Okay. How we go from glory to glory, and not just the issue of transition.
All right, thank you so much, Council. We will get back to you, but let's cross over to our guest outside the studio. Honorable Mathias Mpuga is the leader of opposition in Parliament and legislator representing Nyendo Mukungwe. Honorable, to the program, it is the dialogue, and in the studio we have Councilman Peter Chinove. You can speak to our viewers first, and then we go straight to the issue of General L. Tumwine. During the handover, he made strong statements relating to transition, smooth transition in presidency, and it has generated debate, especially on your side. Some of them hoping probably that somebody strong in government has somehow related to some of the interests in the opposition. Speak to our viewers, Honorable.
Thank you so much, and good morning, the viewers at Salt TV. I would like to greet my senior at the bar, Senior Counsel Chinove, and thank you for affording us this platform to share with countrymen and women our considered opinions on the goings on in motherland. So I'm very excited this morning that you afforded me an opportunity to share with the country my considered view as to the many goings on in motherland.
Now, get your comment on the timing. The statements that was during a handover. Does that mean anything to you?
Well, I have been around for a while, and I am not one of those Ugandans excited about the sentiments expressed by General L. Tumwine. I've been around to see many of his ilk once dropped, then purport to have picked the other sense to see the fact that we are a country under detention. I saw Tinye Funza, the only person who crossed the Rubicon probably was General Mugisha Muntu. And initially Colonel Dr. Besigye. When they disagreed with the regime, they not only issue a very stern advisory, but they had the temerity and courage to say, as far as we are concerned, our disagreements in as far as working together are coincidable, so we are moving on. I am a very close student and a keen one at the actions of the people that General Museveni has used over the years. I am not using the word worked with, I'm using the phrase used on purpose, because I know General Tumwine is just one of those so many that have been over the time being used, but their warped sense of mind, they thought they are working with General Museveni, yet in actual sense they are working for him. And conveniently, he chooses when to dump. So if General Tumwine believes in what he actually said, is he able to come out and make a confession and even seek for forgiveness over his own personal transgressions on our democracy. Just about a few months back, he was the one justifying the violation of human rights in this country. He was the one justifying state-inspired murder. He was the one justifying state-inspired detention without trial. He was the one justifying the arrest of political opponents and justifying the criminalization of political opposition in this country. So has his stance since changed over these matters? I probably will take off occasion to read much into his statements. If he can follow them up with statements explain why initially, when he was still part of the state, and by extension its coercive machinery, saw our quest for a free and fair country differently, and believed that we had no sense, we are not making sense when we demanded that we wanted a country that offered an opportunity at a transition, when we warned that the country was facing an existential crisis because of the strongman mentality, and that we needed assurances that this country would have a chance at democratization. General Tumwine, while he was still having the battered side of his bread on his table, these sentiments never made sense. Probably he offers a lesson to many that perhaps all of us can only guarantee ourselves a better life and a better future when politics is fair, when at the end of the day we are able to even defend the territory and the rights of those we disagree with. As to whether the country is ripe and actually late for a transition, I think it's a no-brainer. The question for me has even a rider. It's not simply a transition. It's not just a political transition, but a democratic transition, implying that there's a lot to work on, including our electoral laws, so that they can not only midwife, but also guarantee that the transition will be democratic and therefore sustainable. Why we talk about sustainability is because we do not want to go into the same problem that we encountered 35 years ago, believing that Museveni and his friends will be any different from the people that received and abused our independence. So we want to restore guarantees beyond the political transition. We want to restore constitutional guarantees that once the transition obtains, it will not only be durable, but sustainable, and therefore worth bequeathing to posterity.
Matthias Mpuga, Councillor Chinobe, can you make a final comment on that issue and then we'll move on?
Yes. First, I had made a few notes here. Now, I want to thank my brother for speaking so well. There are some arenas of disagreement I hold with him. First of all, as Ugandans, we need to stop demonizing our country. Uganda is a free and fair country. That is number one. And free and fair because we conduct elections. In addition to conducting election, my brother is one of the beneficiaries, even when he's on the other aisle of government. We have so many others. Some of my friends I know and they have gone through, and I'm very happy for them. I didn't go through, I went to Taiwan. But I indulged in a democratic process. I think that the question is how do we allow for this to happen? If you are strong, like Obama said, I can still win an election, but the constitution of the USA says I should go after 2 terms. So perhaps removing the strongman mentality. But in as far as free and fair and democratic, Uganda is a democratic nation. That is number one. Number two, I think we need to separate 2 things. There is political ideology and there is advice, sentimental advice, personal advice. Kiza Besigye and my brother Gregory Muntu disagreed on political ideology. There are a few things that happened and they realized they would no longer work comfortably with President Museveni. And within their right, they went and joined the opposition. They started a strong FDC, which has now disintegrated in too many aspects. You know, the political scene keeps metamorphosing. So now you have ANT, you have so many others. So there seems to be no permanent home in politics, especially in the opposition. But they moved. Tumwine is still ideologically aligned to the movement. The only difference is saying now that I am retiring. I think also my brother Museveni should think about retiring so that we have a peaceful transition. He's not saying that Museveni is a bad leader. He's not saying that Museveni should go. But his advice is I think he should prepare for a transition, which is fair. So when you talk about apologizing for ideological belief, I don't think there is need for an apology. For violation of human rights, yes, perhaps there should be an apology. So I think we need to separate those two aspects. And that again takes me to the issue of dump and use. I don't understand this term in politics of use and dump. When I am appointed a minister, I am appointed for a specific objective by the appointing authority who has the power to appoint and remove.
And disappoint.
This thing, and I think the opposition needs to, and not only the opposition, but the country needs to change this thing. You do not go to government or Kuria. So that's now the man has dropped me. I no longer have an office. You are not entitled. It's not your right. You are there to serve Ugandans. You are there to serve Uganda for an appointed time. And when the appointing authority, within the law and within his right, chooses to appoint somebody else, thank God for your opportunity to serve and go and serve elsewhere. I keep telling people these positions of leadership are transitionary in nature. So God gives you the blessing to serve. When my brother Matthias Impuga, now when the people do not elect him again, will that be dumping? It's not. You have served, you go.
Council, isn't it the concern of a section of the public that one person has been in government for, at the top for almost 2 years? Isn't it the origin of these concerns that probably it should be to debate and look at smooth transition? You seem not to look at it as an important issue this time, a critical issue at this moment.
I don't know. You remember my statement at the beginning. My statement was, for me as a person, transition is not an issue. It's a trivial matter. Because whether you want it or not, transition will happen. It's an inevitability of life. Transition will happen. The issue of concern should be from what to what. And that's what my brother Matthias referred to as a meaningful transition. We don't just want a transition, but from what to what should be the issue of concern.
Are we there yet, Council? Are we there yet?
Well, that's a question I think for Ugandans to answer. Because Ugandans are the electorate, we have people in parliament, they make the laws. So the question is, are Ugandans ready for the transition? Okay. My view on this is not important, in my opinion. And I don't think anybody's view is really important, apart from the view of Ugandans. Are they ready for the transition? And there are indicators and parameters that show that Ugandans are ready for the transition. But I also believe that for a transition to be successful and meaningful, you have to have the desire and interest from above to propel that transition so that everybody falls in line. everybody falls in line. And so I don't know whether we are ready as Ugandans, but I think it's a good thing.
Okay, I will cross over to the Honorable Martha Simpuga, and we pick his opinion on Council seems to say that the public is ready, Ugandans are ready for transition, but he fails. You come short of mentioning that probably there are powers that are not ready. Probably.
No, I didn't say the public is ready. I said we need to vet that question.
Okay.
And verify if Ugandans are ready for that transition. You know, what people, the thing people underestimate is the power of comfort, the power of the status quo. And believe it or not, I've studied leadership, I've studied business growth, I have taught all those, and I have realized that human beings enjoy the comfort zone.
Okay.
And so how do we get Ugandans out of that comfort zone into believing that it is possible to have, you know, this transition, and it is a good thing for the country.
All right. Honorable, you can come in from there.
Well, I would like to appreciate my brother Simon Peter for initially the kind comments, but also wish to remind him and viewers that my being where I am is not a factor of taking benefit. It's not out of anybody's magnanimity, but it's because citizens decided so. So the issue of being a beneficiary connotes to magnanimity from an individual. That said, I want to restate the fact that the transition is actually late. For it to being late, the reason why we are now faced with a situation where those in power believe that their situation, their status is ordained, which is why you have so many citizens, younger people rotting away in prisons, in military detentions. There are many held incommunicado because they hold a different view from that of the status quo. And to remind my brother Simon that being a member of parliament and having gone through the last election does not bring it anywhere to being a free and fair process. You probably ended it at where you contested in your party primaries, which was an internal party matter, and never interested yourself into the kind of experience some of us encountered in trying to contest for political power in this country, that day by day our supporters, our technical teams were being picked and arrested because of supporting us and because of providing the technical backstopping we needed. And up to now, we have not yet rescued even a half of them for military detention. You probably, as a senior counsel, have been interested in the illegal, what I regard as illegal and politically motivated prosecutions in the military courts, which we have challenged variously in the civilian courts. These do not really do not portend for an environment that we can speak of as being democratic. And earlier on I talked about the criminalization of political opposition. For me, it's not just a matter of agitation and sentiments, but it's one of the biggest letdown by General Museveni. It's a very big letdown. The citizen is expected better from General Museveni, given what he went through to ascend to the highest office of this land. And he could have done better in trying to make sure that what we encountered, what this country experienced, should not have occurred again under his reign. So for me, we are questioning his conviction about the entire concept of democracy. We are questioning his commitment to democratization. What we do not question right now is his desire to keep in power at all costs. And this is what we are trying to dissuade him about. The question about whether our attempt at democracy is sustainable is the reason why we are talking about working backwards to restore some of the pillars that will make our attempt at democracy sustainable. It's by simply holding what we dub as elections even after 5 years cannot guarantee building an enduring democracy. In fact, the more we do it as a ritual even after 5 years, the more frustration it causes and the more it endangers our attempt at building a democracy. So the conversation about whether the country wants transit, I think, has been ably answered by the people, given the manner in which they have supported the political opposition and the other view, and whether General Museveni and his supporters are willing to support the transition is ably explained by the manner in which he responds to opposition as criminals, meaning that for him, he believes that answer lies solely with him, that it is either him or nobody. And he's not run short of reminding us that he's even willing to plunge this country back into chaos if he's not the one in charge. These are not comments from a Democrat. These are comments from somebody simply willing to hold on to power as a strong man. And this is where probably myself and my brother and senior need to have a conversation as citizens and decipher as to whether General Museveni and his approach to politics guarantees sustainability of a democracy in this era and time. And I tend to believe that his approach does not augur well for the future. We need to think better. For General Tumwine and his ilk, well, they have played their part. It's up to this country and the fair spirit of its citizens to probably be forgiving of his past transgressions and agree to forge ahead. But again, the initiative is upon him and those who have really been a part of the polity of this land for such a long time, that in doing so, they have really stepped on so many toes, and probably they will need to seek for forgiveness for those transgressions.
The people have spoken on that issue of transition, but it is not working. Can we say, can we all agree that you'll pick on from what General Tumwine said and probably reignite that debate and the process? I don't know what you plan. Okay, we will connect again with the Honorable Mathias Mpuga, but you can quickly rebut, and then we'll get him to conclude on this issue.
I like that he says the people have spoken. Yes, the people have spoken. They have elected their president. And the president was sworn in, and he now holds office and has
I don't
appointed
think the
cabinet.
people he's talking about who are the people you're talking about?
So when you talk about people speaking, we talk about the majority, not the minority. And you see, that's the pain of democracy. Democracy is a game of numbers. Democracy is a game of who has better ideas, who convinces better. Painful in Africa, who looks better. In my campaigns, one of the issues was who drinks with us, who buries the most. But the majority have spoken, and this is the leader they have chosen.
Okay.
So that means they are comfortable and happy with the status quo. And I think that's the point I was making. The transition will happen.
Okay.
But it has to be embraced, one, by the nation. Two, the leaders in government have to also embrace the same. And three, it has to be meaningful. because a transition that is not guided can be problematic.
Okay, Council, what is your view on your assessment on the willingness on the side of the people in authority, in power, to discuss the issue of transition?
You're asking me a question that can only be answered by the said people, because I am not in their mind.
Okay.
That as it may be, I think Museveni has always said that we are willing and able and available for a transition. That's why we do elections every 5 years.
Okay.
I think we need to now take the discussion beyond that and say, okay, every 5 years we have elections, but how do we do this better? And I think that's the discussion we need to start having.
All right, as we wind up on this particular issue, let's cross off again to Honorable Mathias Mpuuga for his final comments on this issue. Honorable, your final comment on this issue. I was asking, you said the people have spoken, but it looks like you are not satisfied with the results. Are you picking from General Tumwine and sparking or igniting the debate around transition, or you have other issues?
First of all, I did not realize that I had lost connection with you, so I do not know where you picked my last submission. Probably was still in tandem. I am advised by your technical team that I was being ably heard. So I was only saying that the issue of the transition for me is one that citizens have answered, and it's General Museveni and the military that actually are trying to rob the answer, and they want to scribble their own answer, not the one of citizens. And we are telling them, look, you do not have the audacity to change an answer that citizens have ably written in very clear ink. If my brother and the viewers followed the election that we have just concluded, it leaves so many questions as to the commitment of General Museveni and his friends in allowing this country be. And we do not want to have to look for another midwife. We had thought, probably wrongly, that in him we had a midwife. As it turns out, I am reluctant to call him a democratic cannibal, because he's cannibalizing on the very baby he midwifed. So going forward, the question as to whether they are willing to allow a transition to take place probably again is not supposed to be their preserve. It is giving away so much to ask of them to be the ones determining. What we cannot deny them is to participate. But that's why they have the final say, for me, is not acceptable, and that's not the kind of democracy I'd rather build. The issue of whether the change should happen is a preserve of citizens. And the duty of leaders is to put in place an environment facilitative enough for citizens to make an informed choice without being forced, cajoled, or bought, or bribed, or whichever way you want to say it. So it's not in anybody's space to be the one who's determining the nature of transition. But the business of leadership is to facilitate, but not to determine.
Honorable Mathias Mpuuga, whether you are ready to take on the debate from Jonathan's statements, are you going to ignite that again, or it's not necessary at this moment?
No, it's not a question of igniting it. General Tumwine is just a late riser. He's just waking up late. I've been part of this debate for as long as I have been an active participant in the political discourse of this country. So General Tumwine thought that the sun will never set. So I have been at it, and he's only joining late. Probably let him pick the pieces, let him pick himself up and figure out that our submission on it has not just been general. It's been even particular on some issues. So we are beyond where he is. He's late. He's just following in our dust. So let him take a faster dust at that and join the quest for a free and better Uganda. We're not joining him. He's just in our wake. Hopefully we'll catch up with us.
All right, Honorable, let's cross over to another issue of debate. The reshuffle that would in the army, the UPDF leadership experienced some changes this week. We saw General Wilson Mbadi named the new army commander, the Chief of Defense Forces, replacing David Muhoozi, who was recently appointed minister with the ministry there. And Lieutenant Muhoozi Kainerugaba appointed the Commander of Land Forces, and Lieutenant General Peter Irelu appointed the Deputy CDF. Do you pick anything from those appointments?
You know, the reshuffle speaks for me largely to what we all know, those who really care to follow the motivations of General Museveni. For me, there's not a single surprise because I am a very keen student of his convictions. I am a very keen learner and a graduate of his fears. And therefore, I can ably appreciate the reshuffle and what it intended to achieve. And I can only say from the onset, it is a reshuffle speaking much about his fears than about his convictions. You know, he is a man living a life of fear for the unknown. He is lately he is politically and ideologically dispirited, and the reshuffle is an attempt to confirm his fears, the fears for the present, the fears for the past, and his inherent fear for the future. So I do not read much beyond those three. But of course, the other little bit, again, is that for the first time, we have army officers reshuffled, and the deployment is public service. So then, of course, you question as to what does a deployment in public service herald? My understanding of the role of the military and the entire relation relating to the duty and the roles of the military is quite unsettled by those particular deployments. And that fusion is again, for me, an explanation of the fears, because apparently, as it turns out, General Museveni sees the matters of the state as entirely matters person to holder, and whichever undertaking he makes is supposed to address his fears, his personal fears, not the sustainability of that institution and not the sustainability of the state structures, to the extent that they can even transit from him to another leader or another party by extension. So that is my honest reading into his latest actions with the military, and I'm not inviting anybody to read into what I have said. They are my views.
All right. right, it is the opinion, Honorable Mathias Impuga, and we are going for a break. The dialogue is moving on, and we'll be coming with other issues. Councillor Chinobe will speak to those appointments, make his comments, and we have other issues. Of course, what I didn't say in the beginning is that Honorable Mathias Impuga, the leader of opposition, also appointed his cabinet, the opposition shadow cabinet. And again, we will also look at the matters of health, where we see public hospitals being now engaged to work on the bills that have been actually become an issue for debate. We'll go for a break. When we return, we start from there. It is the dialogue.
Soul Television, Femunyo.
Welcome from the break. It is the dialogue on Soul TV. My name is Simapolo. We have our guests here. One in the studio, Councillor Simon Peter Chinobe. He's a lawyer and the former president of Uganda Law Society. And of course, we have the leader of opposition in parliament, Honorable Mathias Impuga, the legislator representing Nyendo Mukungwe in the 11th parliament. We are talking about issues of health. It's not getting any better in this country as far as the COVID pandemic is concerned. We are into a 42-day lockdown. We are now in the second week. But of course, let's discuss the government's response plan. And of late, maybe what we can talk about is the decision to extend relief support to the vulnerable citizens. And I will again invite Honorable Mathias Impuga to speak, to express himself on that matter. Honorable, talk about the response plan of government, and one of them is the relief support plan, and again the issue of private hospitals that were engaged this week on how they can reduce on the bills that had turned exorbitant.
Yeah, thank you once again. I am happy to make my humble contribution to this conversation about the COVID-19, the government response, and the state of public health generally. I initially offered my views officially in a document I authored this week. I'll pick out a few issues again from there. And you see, the institution to respond, the agents respond, of course, is government, and that's the natural duty of government. But I'm also saying that these kind of situations do not simply need a response. They also require some sense of imagination. When you respond with imagination, you are able to figure out the impact, the trickle-down effect of every measure you undertake. And when you are able to be imaginative, you probably are able to avoid particular measures that will again make you look shabby or make you look as though you lacked imagination. And my quick sense is that the response of government was very conservative on imagination. There was a bit of impulsiveness, and in being impulsive, some of the actions were fatal. I'll take the quick ones, and I explained in my document that the impulsive closure in haste of schools, for me, was an action lacking in imagination. Schools, the air was foul for some time, for over a month. There was a rumor doing the rounds in print media and social media to the effect that schools had been affected by COVID. And if I were a government worth its name, I would have invoked my surveillance to find out the veracity of this rumor about infections in schools and undertake sample to be able to find out whether this is true. And as it turned out that actually the rumor had veracity, if the surveillance function had been invoked, we would have used schools as control centers as opposed to being transmission centers. As it turned out, we missed an opportunity and the schools turned out to be transmission centers. The closure, the impulsive closure, meant that we sent infected children to their families via the public transport, and as we know it, the entire country is devastated. We could have done better if the actions had some extra degree of imagination. I believe there it lacked. The schools could have been used differently. And if, for example, in a school, a sample had detected, say, 50 children affected, again, the schools are well equipped with the facilities that would quarantine them while undergoing a treatment. And systematically, the safe children would be evacuated to their families without having to cause the panic that eventually engendered an any mass transmission. That is one. Two, of course, before I take leave of that, we talked about the fact that the surveillance function will have detected the danger in schools and undertaken to treat the sick, but also we would have used the same opportunity in schools to vaccinate those who are actually qualified to be vaccinated, including teachers that missed out, as well as other support staff in the schools. Now, as we speak, we are not able to do that. We could again have used the same to up our testing function. I still insist, and it's my view, that testing is very limited. We need to up the testing en masse, but again with some degree of classification. And I believe schools would have been better testing samples because of their congregating power. The second issue for me, again in the government approach, was the blanket lockdown for 42 days. To which I'm saying, and still say, and I stated unequivocally in my document, that the blanket closure and the declaration of 42 days is lacking, again, in imagination. First of all, I am yet to receive a scientific explanation of the 42 days. I offered a distinction and said, we are not against a lockdown, but we are for a lockdown that is cascaded. A lockdown that would, for example, undertake 14 days and a 7 days break. Why 14 days? 14 days are the scientific days properly that have been advised, into which somebody can be under quarantine because they have been tested and found to be positive. During that time, people under quarantine are on treatment, and after the 14 days they can be tested to determine whether they have a clear bill. Secondly, break for another 14 days is again the time under which somebody on treatment takes to determine their response on treatment. So we are saying, because of the fragility of our economy, a blanket lockdown for 42 days without breaks, to be able to allow space for people to take a breather and resuscitate their pockets, is counterproductive, because at the end of the day, you have received the proposal, the welfare proposal, the numbers and the approach are again problematic. Forget about the fact that money will be eaten by those who already have. But the fact that you are not able to cater for the vulnerable, and even your definition of vulnerability is fragile and also vulnerable. So you again see there's a problem, which is why our approach of, say, 14-7 would have taken care of those gaps. Not that it would do away with austerity measures, but it would complement them, because we know how the thin nature of our economy and its ability to sustain austerity measures. So in absence of a structured lockdown, you make it look as though you again lacked imagination in doing so. We advise that could have been done differently. So in essence, we are saying, look, you have had 1.5 years as government to undertake measures that would have saved the country from the consequences. You probably would never have stopped the second wave. Government had no capacity of stopping the second wave, but the government had the capacity and time to mitigate on the effects of a ravaging second wave, because there was a time to outsource vaccines other than waiting for donations, because Parliament voted for the money. You had time and some resources to equip our public health facilities better. We would not be speaking about the lack of oxygen. For me, that debate is actually not just an indictment on government, but a debate sleeping in criminality, because if there are individuals that were given money and failed to procure oxygen, or people sleeping on the job and citizens are dying, then they are, for me personally, liable in criminal negligence. Again, the debate about the cost of medication by the public, the private facilities.
Matthias, before you proceed, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
I am asking you, a phased lockdown with breaks. Is it by scientific evidence that would effectively work? Because these decisions, we are aware, have a scientific team, a team of professionals that actually bring out these decisions. What about your proposal? Is it backed with scientific research or precedents anywhere?
I hope you did listen to my submission, and I said mine is scientifically motivated, because I said that, look, the 14 days are the scientific time that have been known to which people are quarantined, those that are affected, that are supposed to be in a quarantine, to both be in a quarantine and undergo treatment. Therefore, if they were sick, they would have completed their treatment cycle, and therefore they can be tested to see whether they have overcome the problem. Secondly, the 14 days again is the mandatory time through which somebody is being asked to self-isolate. And in self-isolation, you can undergo treatment, and also you can also undergo testing to see whether actually you are free from the virus. Thirdly, if the government would again use the breaks to test whether there are more infections, to also use the 7 days break to immunize and test. I hope you get that now. Do you need more science from me?
Well, probably if you give us a precedent that in such a country they did it and it worked, then that will be better.
Have in a country where the lockdown was 42 days. I am managing Uganda, and I'm advising the Ugandan situation, bearing in mind the nature, the structure of our economy, the nature of our lifestyles, and because it's a private citizen is meeting the cost of medication. Now your government is moving to negotiate with private hospitals. Again, it is not negotiating, saying that it's going to meet the bills of citizens. It's not negotiating that they reduce, they negotiate a package to reduce the cost. So I can only plan for Uganda because there's no formula picked from other countries. Are you saying that government picks this from another country? We are only managing our situation, and our situation is different.
I ask you to allow me, also allow my other guests in the studio to respond, because it will be unpractical and unfair if you left without listening opinions. Council. All right.
I want to listen to him. I had another program, but I wanted to give time that I am properly understood by your viewers, and I want to listen to him.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank my brother for his presentation. Let me start with the army. And I think we need to enter a level of understanding that when you serve in public office, time comes and you must go. And it is a very good thing. It's a very good thing indeed. As President Uganda Law Society, I served. I left my legacy. Somebody else, my President Fiona Wall, is now serving, and I'm so happy. It's a very good thing because it grooms better ideas, more innovation, but also gives the junior officers the promise of greatness in the future. Because if you're working and you cannot you cannot go through the ranks to reach the highest posts, then what's the purpose of serving? So I welcome the promotions and the changes in the army. My brother and friend Mbadi from Kasese has been made the CDF. So we cannot say it's a Western affair. Which is a very good thing. He's qualified. He has a master's in air something. He's done a diploma in Nairobi. Yeah, so he's highly trained and well qualified to handle our armed forces. My only caution to him is make sure you adhere to the rule of law. Detention, gazetted places. Detention, not more than 48 hours, among others. So he's very qualified, and I congratulate him and I thank.
But Honorable Mpuga says that the changes reflect the fears the authorities maybe. You can address that too.
For me, this is the question: is this the first transition in the army? You've had so many. Mugisha Muntu was army commander. JJ Odong was army commander. My brother departed, Ronda was army commander. General Muhoz. And now, in fact, I want to commend President Museveni because we are seeing more younger people taking the role of leadership in the army. Now, if Museveni was scared, I think you are safer having a person that is about to die take up that role as opposed to somebody young. Young people are much more dangerous because they're more ambitious. So I don't want to agree with his opinion. I dispel it because if he was scared, I think now you would have another old person that is about to die taking up the. But now you have a young person. Nobody is still a young person.
Yeah, he's in his mid-50s. And
he's in his late 50s. So why not? And there are people in their 80s that can do that job and 70s. So I think it's a good thing, and I want to welcome it.
The COVID response plan. COVID
says,
he says things were mismanaged right out from the beginning.
Let me first respond to.
And even the schools shouldn't have been closed in the first place. The lockdown is not serving the purpose from what he has just submitted.
Okay, now let me respond to this. I respectfully disagree with him. I think President Museveni has been celebrated for doing a very good job in containing COVID. You see, Uganda cannot be seen in isolation. Those of you who have been following news, look at what has happened in Rome. I mean, I had so many friends in Rome,
Italy.
and every morning I would wake up, and I was being told a friend of mine had died because most of their population is elderly. It came to Spain. Spain became a disaster. It went down to Brazil, India. We can talk all these countries, and it's a bad thing. So the reason we did not hit that proportion is because we were able to take precautionary measures at the beginning. And I want to thank the president for taking that hard step. Anybody in his shoes would have thought otherwise. But being the Museveni that we know, he swallowed the hard pill and took the decision, and as a result contained and curtailed the numbers of infection. Now, and which is not again the same case in Tanzania. If you have friends in Tanzania, I have lost dear friends in Tanzania, including the head of state who died. The Attorney General was a personal friend of mine. He died. In fact, there is a photo that the former Attorney General shared with me, and it had all about 9 ministers and the head of state, and they are all dead as of now. So I want to thank the president for having taken this precaution. Now, I tell Ugandans who are watching us, there is no imagination in COVID. If you want imagination, you will die. And the unfortunate thing is the barrier of a COVID patients defies all African structures. We take you there, we throw you there, we leave you there. We shall pray for you after, which I think is very unfortunate, because the family does not get closure. But that's where we are at. So this thing does not need imagination. It is a disease. It is killing. It has even killed the white man. It has now started killing the black man. A black man is a very difficult person to kill. Colonialism failed to take. Now COVID has come, it is killing us. Guys, this thing is real. This thing is real. And so when somebody talks about imagination, there is no imagination. You talk about vaccine for all schools. First, we haven't developed our own vaccine. My honorable friend will know that the Western powers are holding. The AstraZeneca that we were able to get was developed in Cambridge, in a university. And those people said, okay, take it to India for production because we can't mass produce. But also as a result, because it was being mass produced in India, I said, okay, let the Africans and the Indians benefit. That's how we got a few doses. The French, I think, have given us their dose of AstraZeneca, mainly because they don't want to use it. The Americans, I said, all our doses will be given to Africa. Now,
so his proposal to have our kids contained in the school environment, vaccinated and housed in the school, managed there.
Let's start with vaccination. Vaccination is impossible. This is beyond Museveni. This is beyond the World Health Organization. And it lies with the powers that be, USA, UK, the powers that are producing these vaccines. They are hoarding. In fact, with even your money, you cannot buy. That's how bad it is. Because, and I was listening to somebody that was presenting to the World Health Organization, and it was so sad, because some African countries were saying we have money to buy, but nobody wants to sell to us. And we are saying if it's an issue of capacity in production, allow us produce. Because some countries like South Africa has the capacity to produce. But you know, it's now a business, it's the hot cake. So it's unfortunate that the Western powers, those white people, my God, how do you turn life into business? So
you think the issue of vaccination is beyond
it is
our
impractical. It's wishful thinking.
Okay.
Now let's go before we go to the lockdown. You talked about schools being closed. I'm a parent. I know my brother Matthias is a parent. Do you want your child to go back to come back to you dead? Okay. How do I even forgive the president when that happens? So, but then at the same time there is competition. So a child goes to school, mine has to go to school. So the best thing, the best option is all of you don't go to school, stay in the comfort and confines of your houses. And I think it worked very well. But because of societal pressure, everybody was saying, today, they've been at home for 1 year. What are we going to do? So government hearkened to pressure and sent back the children. The results are known. Now it's not about statistics and those graphs the president was showing us. It is here with us.
Yeah.
So you have either lost a child, a grandfather, parent, or somebody has died in your family. If they haven't, pray that it doesn't happen. And the only way to prevent it is by taking care of your life.
Okay.
And so for me, I think this thing of isolate teachers, let them stay at school, I think we need to be reasonable.
Okay.
How many schools, even our old schools like Budo, Makere College School, which others, the good schools,
they may not be able to manage.
They don't have enough housing for teachers. Now the majority are private schools. Teachers come from the public that is infected and come to teach. Okay. So it is a thing that came. Now we are firefighting. And for you to have invested in that, it's capital intensive. These schools are telling you, we have not made money for a year. You want us to build for our teachers' houses. How are we going to do that? We have loans. So we need to be realistic. We need to be reasonable. We need to be practical. So in my opinion, if it took children 2 years to sit at home, I think it would have been a better solution than sending them back to come back and reinfect parents and die. And many of them that came from schools came back with a disease. So I think it's very unfortunate that that happened. The phasing out of let's have candidate classes first, I think was a good idea. Maybe regulate numbers, but how do you do that in UPE schools? So it's a catch. You're between a hard place and a rock. The safer bet should have been not to allow children to go back to school, in my opinion.
In your opinion.
Now, again, testing, the value of testing. Mulago is now, most government hospitals, but mainly I know Mulago, I know Zambia, and a few hospitals are providing free testing. But you need to understand that the cost of testing is high. This COVID thing, look at it as a business. So people are making money off you, and you are dying. So the best way to understand, if you are that, then you will be selfish with your life and safeguard it more.
I think the onus is talking about government investing in mass testing to identify the infected and isolate them probably and manage them. So
if you have a vision of 42 million, if 20 million are infected, where are you going to isolate them? So it's impractical. And at what cost are you going to test? My friend, a test costs a minimum of 70,000 Ugandan shillings. Others are between 60 to 100,000, 150. Convert that in dollars, multiply by the population. Then you realize that we are being unrealistic. You can't mass test, you can't mass vaccinate. In fact, even leave alone the hoarding, even countries like the States and others have better vaccination statistics, but have not vaccinated the entire population. Okay. Now, the lockdown, 42 days. Now, I'm going to do simple math for our viewers. So when you do 42 and divide by 3, how many days are those? 14. So the scientific explanation behind the 42-day lockdown is let's have 3 gestation periods. Because we've not had tracing for those infected. We don't know who is infected and who is not. We don't know how many are sick, how many are dying. Some people are even dying at home. So let's give it 3 cycles to allow us, to allow the disease go. Because it's a fast gestation disease, people get sick, die, others heal. Within 3 cycles, the assumption is it will be contained. Now, I go to the next, the lack of preparedness that they're talking about. I remember during campaigns, the president came and said, this thing is here. The reason people are not dying, and I remember, because I deal with peasants and my people in the village, and people were saying, the disease is just a theory. It is not there. Abo bayiya byabwe kulirako sente obulwadde tebuliyo And that's what people were saying. Now, and this was the worst thing. We saw videos going around from the centers where people were being kept, and people were saying, "I'm here. I'm not feeling bad. Now they are containing me. Why am I here?" And we were laughing over those things. Now, the health system was able to contain the death rate because it was not overstretched. It was not overwhelmed. And that's the same scenario in every other country, even those that have better medical systems than us. Then we woke up one morning and children were going to bars, people were going and hiding in bufundas, going to lodges, and then the disease went out of control. Now, just to show you the reality, people who are watching us, people who think this thing needs imagination, I, Simon Peter Chinobe, with all my connection, made phone calls to everybody I knew to get an ICU bed. What does that show you? That our system is overwhelmed. And that's why we needed to lock down, so that the system can recover from that stretch. You hear people fighting for oxygen. You hear people now, and so this thing is serious. You want imagination? Just look at the people being announced dead. Those are people that had money, that were able to pay the big bills, but they have died. So we need to take care of ourselves.
So in a nutshell, are you saying government did met its obligation?
Yes.
But as the president says, there was lack of concern in the public. That is what led us to what we see today.
I think there was lack of concern for the public. So, and that's what led to to this particular mess. Now, going forward also, we are where we are at. 42 days, probably the disease would have passed and will not be having as many people dying, as many people infected. It will be under control.
Okay.
But that as it may be, I understand Uganda is a liberal economy. But I mean, we have to reach a level where government has to rein in on profiteers.
Private.
Yes, you can't, really, you are charging 120 for a service that is not even worth 20 million. So just because we are in a crisis, you decide to inflate your bills. I think government needs to rein in on private hospitals. And I saw my sister Nakalema. I want to thank her. She went to the park with the current prime minister. Said, why are you asking for this? Why are you bidding for this? That same mechanism should be transferred to private hospitals. You know, because this is a crisis.
But good that you both, my guests this morning, are lawyers. It may not be supported by the law in any way.
No, but you see, we are living in a crisis. Yes, it is not supported by the law. But what do you do in an era of crisis?
All right.
What do you do in an era of crisis? And I think government needs to come in with some of those measures.
Okay. Finally, as we cross over to Honorable Mpuga, do you agree that the 14-7 break, then 14 mode of lockdown would be better? Give people a break to go and at least access their businesses, as you also assess.
You see, what is the aim of the lockdown?
The 14 days.
Again, I told Ugandans, and by the way, I am not talking because I am insensitive. I would like to give the populist view. Let people go and work. That's the populist view. But my people, my friends, people are dying. It is a reality. Today I was entering here and I was being told of Apostle Senfuma, Bishop Senfuma, who died. We have lost 5 lawyers.
Okay.
5 lawyers.
I think, Honorable, I request you that.
So for me, that cycle of go for 14 days, those who die, then go back, work for 14 days, reinfect one another, come back, we lock down, you die, then no.
That's
42 days, let the disease run out.
Okay, let's cross over to Honorable Mathias Mpuga. and he will give us a few minutes before he moves on to another appointment. Honorable, you are live.
Yeah, thank you again. I need to invite my brother to interest himself in the depth of the document I authored. Talking about imagination, if you lack imagination, Parliament gives you money to buy ambulances and you buy pickups for RDCs. Parliament gives you money to buy oxygen and you buy tear gas. You surely are lacking imagination. So when we talk about imagination, we mean the ability and the willingness, the priorities in a crisis. If you are not able to even know the priorities in a crisis, then you are lacking in imagination. So you become impulsive and end up endangering the entire population. So you endanger the population by lacking in imagination. So that's what you do to the population. So we are inviting for reflection on the actions taken to avoid being impulsive and you cause a danger. When we said that schools should never have been closed, it's not for lack of knowledge of what happens in schools. We're actually saying that the fact that there were children in boarding schools, they could have been contained there for the time being. Parents had paid money, they could have been fed as they wait for the trouble to go. I have not known any country, probably my brother will tell the viewers, I have not known any country that they are simply hid away from the virus and disappeared. The breaks are meant to augment government programs. If you break for 14 days, you are immunizing borders because of their massive interaction, because they are big community interactors. You are immunizing and testing market vendors because of their interactive power. That's what we meant. We did not mean that you cannot simply lock down for 14 days and the virus disappears in Lake Victoria. No, it will stay. Those who are in hiding will die from hiding. So we are inviting for action. The breaks will be followed by action because we are aware of the problems. And we are not talking about this because we have not lost loved ones. I will tell you that I lost my best friend and best man, one of the best economists this country has ever seen, probably. I lost him 3 weeks ago, and I'm alive. I have lost close family relations, friends. So it's not that I have not lost people, but I'm saying our planning could have been better. And in saying this, we are not in a contest to have winners and losers. We are inviting again for reflection. In this whole exchange, there's nobody to defeat. You know, we are not debating to defeat anybody, that somebody made a superior argument. Which is why we say, if my view is this, does it make sense that we can again reflect on it? There's nobody to defeat in this whole debate. So anybody debating to defeat anybody is lost the plot. So we are only inviting for the other view, and the other view is not a reckless view. It's a view undertaken after imagination, and I'm underlining the word imagination. And I have talked about the measures taken by government that lacked imagination. At the height of the election, some of us who had some degree of imagination even warned that the election could be postponed because we are in a crisis. And people said, no, we are in a hurry to have elections because the electoral cycle is constitutional. Is death constitutional? So people who endangered the citizens are well known because we warned them. But because they had political motivation to really conduct some rituals and get over the other side of the lake, they never listened. And we are where we are because money was supposed to buy oxygen. It was used to buy tear gas to subdue political opponents. Money was voted in Parliament, where I sat in the 10th Parliament, to buy ambulances for districts and regional referral hospitals. It was used to buy pickups for RDCs to harass political opponents. So we know what we are talking about, and I never wanted to go into that arena, but we are inviting for communication between citizens and the leaders of our people. We're the leaders of our community peoples, and in this whole conversation, there's nobody to defeat.
Okay, Honorable, in the interest of time, can you talk about the plan, the relief support plan? Are you in support of the strategies that are being improvised? And again, if you have time, you can also hint on your cabinet, the opposition shadow cabinet that you appointed, that you made, the appointments you made a day ago.
No, we talked about the austerity approach, government giving some money to citizens. Even during the first lockdown, personally, or some of us were against the whole idea of distributing beans and posho. We were for cash because we're in a country where the basic basket is not defined. My brother Chinobe probably is in love with the potatoes, and when you give him a basket of potatoes, his family is settled. My family needs karo. So when you give us maize flour, probably we've not catered for our basic basket. Families have different needs. The question of the day, whether the construction of the basic basket has taken care of key indicators, including the consumer price, to determine how much money is going to be given for each family, including but not limited to the price of consumer goods and services. You remember in our proposal, we even suggested that government could probably could even reconsider activation of some of the tax measures in the next budget that will begin sometime next week to allow for relief in a free market economy. When people are constrained, one of the ways of giving them relief is to limit the extent of direct impact on their earnings. So taxes that are of a direct nature, and some of those that are of a direct nature we talked about, could be really halted to allow for normalcy to return. Then the government could activate them. So, of course, there will be problems with the cash transfers. We invite government to look at better ways of reaching to the vulnerable, and again considering defining better the vulnerable. We have people that have been vulnerable for as long as they have lived their lives. We have people whom COVID have recruited into vulnerability, and we are those that politics have recruited into vulnerability. So the whole spectrum of vulnerability is got to be properly evaluated to allow for a better capture of the situation. Then lastly from me is that yesterday I gave the country a team of 30 honorable colleagues. I am going to work with the law over the coming.
Sorry, we seem to have lost our guest, Honorable Mathias Impuga. He's a legislator for Mukungwe Nyendo, and he is the leader of opposition in Parliament. He was making his case on the plan of government to extend relief support to the vulnerable citizens. And you can come in, Council. I don't know where.
Now,
entry point. You can pick it.
This COVID thing. Now, first of all, I think every Ugandan, or rather most Ugandans, are vulnerable at this point. Why? Because one, you either are a successful businessman, but your business has been closed off, is not accessible to the public, and you have loans to pay, you have rent to pay. So when you're talking about vulnerability, how are you dealing with those sectors? And that's the tax-paying base of Uganda. How do we help them continue, the continuity plan? And I think that's very important. Are we going to have interest rates, a cap on interest rates, especially for banks? Are we going to have tax holidays, especially for businessmen and tax defaulters? So what is the government continuity plan for these vulnerable businessmen? Now, secondly, you're talking about these people who earn a meal for a day, I go, I work, they pay me. Or I work and I get paid, but today I haven't been paid because I'm not working for 42 days. And that's where the issue of statistics comes in. It's a very good idea. I like that they're going to help the vulnerable people. I like that they're receiving money. Hopefully, those thieves stealing money, I hope you thieves, you do not steal this money. And may God strike you, should you attempt. Really, God, you know they say a city flourishes when the wicked perish. Those people who are planning, who think this is a deal, I pray that God will strike you dead. Let this money go to the necessitous people. For the first time, love country and people above self. You know, let this money go. But also, what statistics are you going to use? I had our Right Honorable Prime Minister saying we are going to look at your mobile money balance and then determine whether you're vulnerable or not.
That have been made
but that's not, your mobile money transactions are not a reflection of your well-being. Some of us have money going through our phones to either pay clients or somebody has called and said, Nyamba, you know. So my mobile money balance is not reflective of my social status. And that's where we need to seriously reconsider reactivating the LC system. Because with the LC system, before they got bad, now they got spoiled. The LC chairman knew her, omukadde gundi, oyo ali bubi nnyo, abazzukulu abaana bamufaako, bamulekera abazzukulu. They know the status of their people. And those are the people that should be giving us the statistics to say, you know, in Kungu or in Kiriabutuzi, where I come from in Bugaya, there is this and this family that is doing badly, and I know them and I can vouch for them. These people qualify. Then you come and say, Chinowe, oye mugaga. That one is rich. In fact, Chinowe can even help us, help a few people if you talk to him. So those are the statistics we should be collecting for this to be effective. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to find people in Bunyoro getting relief, and people in Wakiso saying, for us, we haven't seen it, like it was the last time. So the scheme is good. It reduces costs of distribution, but we need to have proper statistics. And in my view, the best place to get these statistics is from the local leaders, the local people. You have people, I don't even know what they do, the DSOs, the GISOs, those are intelligence gathering entities. Now, if those aligned with the LC chairman, they would come up with better statistics of how to distribute and to who to distribute this money.
Council, as we wind up, what we know now, though Cabinet is set to sit tomorrow to finalize and make conclusions on this particular issue, is that some 53 billion have been set aside to facilitate this process. And we remember last time when government came up with a similar arrangement, it was more than that. It was more than 53 billion. And this time around, they've now incorporated even cities, new cities, into this process. Won't it make the whole process? Won't it be just a drop in an ocean?
I think first and foremost, 53 billion is a start. Distribute the little you have. Account for it. Accountability and transparency is very important. When a person gives you money to deal with, please account, and account satisfactorily. And then request for more money. I think, Matthias, I don't know if he's still here, they have their procedures of come, apply for a supplementary. After you have accounted for what you have taken. So 53 may not be enough, but it's a starting point. And I think if it is utilized properly, then the next budget, people will be saying, yes, I benefited. Yes, I am okay because of this fund. Please provide more. So I think it's a starting point.
Well, a parting shot because our time is running out, especially on the engagements between government and private health facilities. You are a lawyer. Will that be possible, really?
I think it is possible. We have seen government, and government has authority to rein in on private entities, especially in time of crisis. Because we are dealing with a pandemic, you can come up with regulations that rain down on these private entities. And the good thing is we have now a very good Attorney General who has been in court before and understands legal interpretation. I think we need to come up with regulations to regulate these businesses that we license to provide medical care, at least for the duration of the pandemic. We are not saying don't make money. Make money, but don't be extortionist. I had somebody yesterday, one of my partners was telling me, you know, when he was coming out of hospital, parents were negotiating and saying, we want to bury our son, but we cannot afford that money. Can you take some of his organs and donate them or sell them to reduce the bill?
Oh.
It has gotten to that level. That's how painful it is. And this is the time government really needs to rein in.
Is it, does it call for a revision of the whole issue of privatization, that probably government should again retain some authority
you see,
in the private sector?
When your government does have authority, that privatization did not take away the entire authority. Privatization said liberalize the economy, let people do these things that government has been doing, but it doesn't take away the power and mandate of government to control within the principles of the law. And that's why I'm saying you need to develop regulations based on the ongoing event, the pandemic, to control and rain down on these private entities. And so there seems to be a reluctance on government, but let government do it, because it's important for our people to get proper
You're parting short
medication.
on probably your word
Now,
on the severity of the problem, the COVID-19 pandemic.
So, in brief, Ugandans, people who are listening to us, COVID is real. People are dying. You have seen, you have heard, and it's still here with us to stay. The cardinal obligation for your life lies with you. Please take care. Follow the SOPs, social distance, wash your hands, and all those things that we have been told to do. This thing is critical and very, very serious. We commensurate with you. We pity those that have lost their loved ones. We have lost 5 lawyers, Enoch, so many people. We pray for you and pray that God shall guide you. COVID is beatable, but only if we do the right things.
Thank you so much, our viewers, and thank you so much, Council Simon Peter Chinobe, the former president of the Uganda Law Society. I must also thank the Honorable Martha Simpuga, the leader of opposition in Parliament. Sadly, we didn't get that opportunity to give you that parting shot, but your views and opinions were well expressed. From Soul TV production, I must thank our viewers. I thank everyone behind the production. We will meet next week. The dialogue is out. Good afternoon and have a good weekend.